Hi everyone, sorry I can't be there today. Seems like me and Sawyer have just been getting sick all the time. So, last lesson we looked at graphing inequalities with two variables. This time we're going to look at writing the inequality by looking at the graph. So we want to figure out what inequality this graph represents. So the first thing we need to do is find the slope and the y-intercept and write a slope-intercept equation. So we're going to start with an equation and then we'll turn it into an inequality later. I always like to start with finding the y-intercept because it's easier to find. So we're just looking at the point where the line crosses the y-axis. In this case, it's crossing the y-axis at -3, so our y-intercept is -3. Now we're going to pick a second point and we're going to use that to figure out the slope. So you can pick any other point on the line. I'm just going to pick one that's pretty obvious to find, so I'm just going to pick the x-intercept. Then we're going to count the rise and the run for the slope. So to get to that second point, I have to go up 3. So my rise is 3, or my numerator is 3. Because I went up, we know that the slope is positive. For our run, we always go to the right. And we're going to count over 1, 2, 3 to the right. So our slope could be positive 3 over 3. I want to simplify that fraction. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So now I know my slope is 1, my y-intercept is -3, so I want to go ahead and plug that into my slope-intercept equation. Since m is the variable that represents slope, I'm going to put the slope in place of m, and b is the variable that represents the y-intercept, so I'm going to put in -3 in place of the b, and we know that plus a negative, they're different signs, so those are going to make a negative, so x plus a -3 is the same as x minus 3. We also know that if we have a 1 in front of a variable, we can just rewrite that as the variable by itself. X and 1x mean the same thing, so let's just write this in the simplest form. So the next thing we need to do is turn this into an inequality. So we're going to test a point on this graph to see which inequality symbol we need to use. I'm going to select the point 3, 4, but you guys can pick any point that you want when you do this. I just like picking simple numbers. So 3 is going to be our x value, 4 is going to be the y value. We're going to plug that into the equation that we came up with and see what the relationship of those two numbers in the inequality is. Since 3 is my x value, I'm going to plug that in place of x. And since 4 is my y value, I'm going to plug that in place of y. So I have 4 equals 3 minus 3. I'm going to do that math. 3 minus 3 equals 0. So 4 equals 0. We know that 4 doesn't equal 0. This isn't an equation. This is going to be an inequality. So what's the relationship between 4 and 0? 4 is greater than 0. So that means that we are going to use the greater than symbol when we write our inequality. The greater than symbol is the one we can think of it as an arrow that's pointing to the right, because the right is the part of the number line where the numbers get greater. We're not quite done with our inequality symbol though, because we need to figure out if it's equal to as well. So if the little line goes underneath it. So if the line is solid, we are going to have that equal to line. So it's going to be, greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to, depending on what the point shows us. In this case, the line is solid, so we are going to use that equal to symbol. So when we go to write this inequality, we're going to take the equation that we came up with, y equals x minus 3. But instead of our equal sign, we're going to say y is greater than or equal to x minus 3. And that's our final inequality based on this graph. All right, so now I want you to practice. I'm sorry, in your packets, the copy didn't come out that well, so please make sure you shade these on the correct side in your packets before you try these out. Problem A is shaded below the line. So is problem B. You could also think of problem B being shaded to the left of the line. So make sure you update that on your packet. Below these notes is the assignment for you to do these try-it problems.